Have you ever experienced a moment that split your life in two? That's what happened the day my father looked me in the eye and gave my future to someone else. It began just like any other family get together. There is too much gloss, too little integrity. The sound of clinking crystal and hushed murmuring filled our family's mansion, while my stepmother Meredith rearranged roses in a vase that likely cost more than my first car. I stood by myself by the enormous fireplace and pretended to sip champagne. As he paced by the window, my father was constantly looking at his watch. My stomach turned over. I was still unsure of why. However, I would. My name is Jessica. I would introduce myself. The truth was more complex than the statement. I work for my father's company. I had been mired in that industry for 3 years. Missed trips, late nights, early mornings, and birthdays. I gained knowledge of everything, including supplier negotiations, spreadsheets, and handling egos in glass offices. This will all be yours one day, he used to say. However, that promise perished today. My father said, "Please sit down, everyone," in a steady, well-practiced voice, imposing. That weight was always there, the kind that forced you to listen against your will. I sat down on a leather sofa's edge. My stepbrother, Quentin, was already stretched out in an armchair as if he had inherited it. He had never worked a day in his life at the age of 22. However, his jawline supposedly won him the family's blind devotion, and he had a trust fund and an Instagram page filled with motivational remarks. My dad cleared his throat. "As everyone is aware, I have been considering the future of our family business." I grinned. At last, we would finally discuss what I had created with him. What I had merited. He gave Meredith a smile. "I've made the decision to give Quentin majority ownership and control, after giving it some thought. The rest I didn't hear. It struck the chest like a punch, the kind that leaves you gasping for air. "What?" With just a whisper, I spoke. Meredith added, "All poison and sugar. What the business needs is a new perspective." Numb. I turned to my father. "Dad, we discussed this." "I've been employed for the past 3 years," he interrupted without even glancing at me, saying, "You'll still get paid, but Quentin has creative ideas." I yelled. "He doesn't even know the clients or the sector. My degree is an MBA. I am familiar with every aspect of that business." "Some capacity," Quentin boastfully remarked. "Perhaps HR?" I had my heart in my throat. I got up. "You promised, Dad." "You mentioned that after I completed graduate school, Jessica, things change," Meredith replied in a gentle yet strong tone. "We must consider what is best for the family." I surveyed the space. Then it dawned on me. I'm not related to them, no more. I gave my father a direct look. "Your daughter is me." He didn't recoil. He assured her that he would still take care of her, as if I were a burden that needed to be controlled. Narrowly conscious of the side table, I almost toppled. I reached for my bag. I managed to say, "Congratulations, Quentin," in a steady voice. "I hope you have fun managing the business I helped create." Meredith called after me and said, "Don't be dramatic, Jessica." That was the end of it. I left that house with a smile on my face, got to my car, and broke. The sort of sob that begins in your back. The kind that, once it begins, is impossible to stop. It buzzed on my phone. "Lucy, how did it go?" "They gave him everything," I said, my fingers shaking as I gazed at the screen. "All of the things my father promised me." She responded right away. "I'll be over. Don't make any foolish decisions before I arrive." I didn't. However, I gave it some thought. Because what do you have left when someone takes your future away from you? 3 years of self-denial, of making an effort to gain a place at the table. Lost. All because Meredith felt that what I built should go to her son. I then checked the rearview mirror, though. I also got to see my dad, looking out the window at me. We looked at each other for a moment, and we exchanged something. Feeling sorry? Perhaps. Then Meredith entered the picture, said something that I was unable to hear. Suddenly, he turned his back. I sat at my kitchen table the following morning, surrounded by unanswered emails and cold coffee. Once more, my phone buzzed. "Lucy, how are things going?" I had no idea. Not quite yet. I wasn't finished, though. They believed I would disappear, act like a good daughter and take the insult. Keep quiet, not dangerous. However, I am the daughter of my father, and I don't surrender easily. Despite taking everything away from me, my grandmother gave me a way out. I sat in Virgil's office 3 days after everything had fallen apart, surrounded by the fragrance of calm history and ancient books. Since I was a child, Virgil had been my family's attorney. My dad used to sign business contracts and joke about succession while I sat in this exact chair, wearing patent leather shoes and swinging my legs. I used to think legacy meant love. I knew better now. I twisted the tissue in my lap and murmured, I just don't understand. How was this legal for him to do? After taking off his reading spectacles and massaging the bridge of his nose, Virgil uttered the words that would once more shatter my existence. Last year, your father reorganized the business. He was able to assign his shares to anybody he desired because he was the majority shareholder. I gasped. The previous year? I muttered. He had been preparing for this, preparing to ignore me, and didn't say a word. After a moment of hesitation, Virgil got up and proceeded to the filing cabinet behind his desk. You should be aware of another thing. Regarding your grandmother. I blinked. 5 years ago, she passed away. She did. However, she had other plans besides her funeral. He set a heavy folder down in front of me and carefully opened it slowly. A trust was left in your name by your grandma. Strict guidelines. However, it is legally enforceable. I scowled. A trust? Virgil gave a nod. $2 million. My mouth fell open. What? She wanted you to be in the dark until certain things happened. In particular, if you ever lost your share in the family business. I gazed at him. She was aware. My granny knew somehow. I was aware that my father might eventually pick Meredith and Quentin over me. She expressed her desire for you to be able to create something on your own. However, only if you merited it. He gave the legal papers to me. I scanned the terms with shaking hands. I needed to have a profitable business by the time I was 30 in order to get the trust. It needed to make money in the first year. No family participation, no shortcuts. I had to have it. Completely. My throat constricted. She didn't think inheritance existed. She had faith in you, Virgil remarked quietly. In your drive, in your head. And when I fail, I whispered. He clarified. She believed in what failure teaches. I reclined and gazed up at the ceiling. Is my dad aware? He gave a head shake. Nobody does, not even Meredith. My chest flooded with an odd sense of relief. There was no handout here. It was difficult. And I experienced something other than grief for the first time in days. I sensed a mission. As Virgil flipped through the folder, he replied, There's more. She left notes, contact lists, and market research behind. Your granny completed her assignments. I had a real, keen laugh. She certainly did. She didn't just want to give you a head start. She wanted to give you tools. Is it okay if I take this with me? Obviously. Just keep in mind that confidentiality was her one and only need. You are not allowed to disclose the source of the funds to anybody. Not even Lucy? He looked at me for a while. Not Lucy in particular. I let out a sigh. She will murder me. She will comprehend later. Virgil said one more thing as I got up to go. Meredith called. Yesterday. Asked whether you had visited this place. Appeared to be worried. As I put the packet in my tote, I grinned. Give her time to worry. With our laptops open and caffeine pumping through us, Lucy and I sat in our favorite coffee shop that evening. With a glance that suggested, I know you're up to something. She swirled her latte. So, she remarked nonchalantly, will you explain to me why you've suddenly become a startup machine? You were crying in my car last week. You're now using TED Talk quotes to discuss supply chain strategy. I swiveled my screen in her direction. Because I'm constructing something superior. My scheme? An environmentally conscious packaging business. Ethical, scalable, and biodegradable. A company that meant something instead of merely checking boxes. She patiently scrolled through my pitch before saying, Jess, this is good. Really, really good. It must be. She nodded and sat back. All right, I'm on board. I blinked. What? I'm on board. Done whatever you need, whether it's research, networking, or memes to boost your spirits. I squeezed her hand as I reached across the table. However, The bell above the door chimed before I could express my gratitude. Quentin entered as well. He was dressed in his typical outfit, complete with a phone attached to his hand, smug entitlement, and $1,000 loafers. He slipped into our booth without our invitation and said, "Ladies, are you planning retaliation?" Lucy gave an eye roll. "In fact, we were. However, you interrupted the mood when you arrived." I shut down my laptop. "Quentin, what do you want?" He grinned. "Dad is concerned for you. Claims that you've lost your mind. I wanted to check in. Act like a good brother." I grinned. Sharp, chilly, steady. "I'm launching a company." He had a laugh that could turn heads. "You? How much money? That isn't your concern." His voice was low as he leaned in. "I'm willing to bring you back, you see. A new director is needed for HR. Or perhaps an executive assistant?" I got up. "Thank you. However, some of us would rather construct something than have it delivered to us." I noticed my reflection in the cafe glass as Lucy and I were leaving, and for the first time, I appeared to be the one who would prevail. My business wasn't merely a concept. A promise was made. I was seated across from the regional director of a large restaurant chain, 3 months into the development of Green Shift Solutions. Sarah was her name. She handled sample containers like holy artifacts, had questions like scalpels, and wore a crisp jacket. While displaying one of our biodegradable takeout cartons, she remarked, "This looks impressive, but how can I be sure you'll deliver? Startups with flashy presentations and little follow-through have already burnt us." I didn't wince. "3 manufacturing partnerships have been secured," I responded, tapping my tablet. "We have direct control over our supplier chain. No intermediaries. There are no surprises." She arched an eyebrow. "You are a new business. Where did you find the money to accomplish all of this?" I grinned. "Let's just say that I developed my resourcefulness early on. The trust fund was not mentioned by me. I wouldn't. There was more to it than secrecy. It has to do with ownership. My grandmother no longer had this money. Now it was me. It's my risk, my perseverance. I have a stake in the outcome." Sarah reclined. "All right. We will begin with a trial period of 3 months. 2 places. If you deliver, we'll discuss growth." We exchanged handshakes. And I had the kind of fire that glows rather than burns when I left that office. Lucy screamed loud enough to startle a nearby cat when I called her to tell her. "We succeeded!" she yelled. "This is genuine, Jessica. We're on board," I remarked. "This is only the beginning." Even I, however, couldn't help but smile. I worked until midnight that night, forgoing the champagne. I didn't have to, since I desired to. This business? It was more than a simple product. It was a pledge. To my grandmother, to me, to any woman who has ever been told, "He just fits the role better." Or maybe next time. Quentin left me a voicemail the following day. "Hello, sis. I've heard you're having a big impact on the environment. Let's have a conversation. I've got an idea." Without hesitation, I erased it. However, I was unable to remove the subsequent message. From my father. "Join us for dinner. Let's have a conversation. You have my admiration." I looked at it for a while. I then typed back, "Not possible. Too busy planning my future." And I meant what I said. The momentum continued to build. We discovered a co-working facility in the heart of the city that had recycled glass barriers, tables made of salvaged wood, and a proprietor who was passionate about sustainability. I made a green shift pitch to him. In addition to securing office space, we had acquired our first local client by the end of the conference. As the sun warmed my cheeks, I left the meeting and came to the realization I owned this. Everything. The late evenings. The self-doubt. The crazy idea that perhaps, just possibly, I could create something greater than the place I was excluded from. I had hardly found my footing when Quentin arrived at our office. Not invited. Unrepentant. As if he owned the building, he leaned against the doorframe. As his gaze swept over the open plan design and repurposed fiberboard desks, he remarked, "Nice setup. Very humble." I shut down my laptop. "What are you looking for?" "Dad's business is embracing green. It's a good PR move. We are trying to find a supplier." I thought I would give it a try. Like he was doing me a favor. He stated it. "You want me to give the business you took from me packaging?" He gave a shrug. Jess, hurry up. It's only business. No, I quietly said. It is my concern. He was led to the door by me. He turned back as he entered the hallway, his mask briefly sliding. This won't sit well with Dad. I was not blinking. Dad no longer has the authority to like or not like anything I did. Sarah texted me that evening. The signed contract has been forwarded to your attorney, eager to collaborate with you. I spent a lot of time looking at that message. The folder my grandmother left me was then opened. It had a list of company objectives she had written down in her own precise handwriting. The last thing? First significant customer. I marked it off. Now, GreenShift was real profitable. Expanding, mine. On his Instagram, Quinton had often discussed vision, sayings on leadership and legacy, photo opportunities and hashtags, every performance. However, I had the real deal, and it was shortly to be seen by the industry. Let them question how I managed to do it. Permit them to inquire. Because of the truth? I wasn't only creating a business, I was constructing my future. One they didn't anticipate. I wasn't the same girl they left behind when they returned, though. At the National Sustainability Conference, I stood in the center of our exhibit, adjusting the banner for the final time after 6 months of operating GreenShift Solutions. Lucy, looking like a pleased stage mom, handed me a coffee. A lot of attention is already being paid to prototypes. We're going to blow some people away, I believe. She was not mistaken. Individuals were halting, retrieving our biodegradable containers, checking our QR codes, and posing genuine inquiries. Although I had made proposals before, this time was different. Getting a client wasn't the only goal here. It was about being noticed, not as a daughter of someone, not as a helper to someone. However, I was the CEO of a business that I started from scratch. Next, I heard a voice I hadn't anticipated. Upsetting a sector? Isn't that a little ambitious? I pivoted. Just beyond the booth, Quinton was decked out in luxury labels and cocky charm, like a magazine layout. My father and Meredith stood behind him, lingering by the doorway like phantoms from another existence. Why are you in this place? I asked, being cautious to speak evenly. He declared, It's a public event, open to all participants in the industry. He took one of our crates and gave it a performatively skeptical inspection. Nice, he remarked. However, it might be a stretch to call this groundbreaking. Next quarter, we will offer our own range of environmentally friendly products. For your information, a reporter in the vicinity became alert. Are you also going into the market for eco-friendly packaging? She inquired. Quinton activated his rehearsed smile. Yes, we will be able to offer far more competitive price than other companies because to our clientele and funding. He stated it without even looking at me. I didn't flinch, though. GreenShift recently secured a contract with a national restaurant chain, I remarked quietly, turning to face the reporter instead. We were chosen because we provided cost-effectiveness and innovation. Additionally, we have partnerships with 3 big shops. Are you interested in viewing the projections? The reporter's gaze brightened. Definitely. I guided her over to our exhibit. Meredith whispered behind me. How did she get those contracts? I could have provided her with the solution. However, I owed her nothing. The remainder of the event passed quickly. Interviews with the media. Interest from investors. Business representatives are requesting demos. In the finest conceivable way, we were overloaded. Across the lobby, Quinton and my father were having a disagreement when I eventually looked up again. The hands are flying. Face reddened. After a few minutes, he came charging back at me. You simply had to take center stage, didn't you? He muttered something under his breath. You won't make this simple, will you? I chuckled. Simple? You termed it a favor and gave me a reason to establish an empire. What did you anticipate happening? His voice was low as he leaned in. Where did you obtain the initial funding? Dad is posing queries. Something doesn't seem right, I answered. It sounds like a problem with you. At that moment, a tall man wearing a dapper blue suit approached. Jessica? Thomas from Eco Retail Group is who I am. I watched your presentation. Do you mind if we speak? Quinton took a step back. A moment with family. Thomas gave him a disinterested gaze. Well, I have a business here. Unless this is a critical family moment. No, I responded with ease. Not at all urgent. Quentin's gaze grew strained. This is not the end of it. I looked across at Thomas. Should we discuss packaging options? We had 3 contract bids in the works, 5 follow-up meetings planned, and more buzz than I could keep up with after the event. Our family lawyer, Virgil, sent me a notification as I was going through my emails. The trust fund established by your grandma has been formally activated. The first quarter was determined to be profitable. Congratulations. I spent a lot of time looking at that message, not because I was in need of the cash. However, I understood what it meant. I have maintained every requirement, constructed from the ground up, grown an actual thing. I had surpassed the high standard established by my grandmother, without taking any short routes, without a family, silent. I received another SMS that evening. From Quentin, we must speak. Emergency in the family. Please. I didn't respond. However, I also didn't remove it. Our office manager, Maria, knocked on my door the following morning. Quentin and your father are in the lobby. Do I have to mail them off? I stopped. The idea of them entering my office 3 years ago might have made me lose it. Right now, the building belonged to me. Send them up. They appeared smaller than I had recalled. Not only had my father's hair and eyes aged, but so had his gait, as if the burden of his decisions had finally fallen upon him. Quentin appeared to have run out of chips after bluffing for too long. My father tried to grin as he remarked, "Nice office. You did a good job. What are you looking for?" I stood up and asked. Quentin was the first to move forward. "We need your assistance." I waited. "The business is failing. Environmental infractions. Penalties imposed by law. Our reputation is in ruins. To assist us in rebuilding, we require a partner with experience in sustainability." It nearly made me chuckle. I'll venture a guess. Someone like me? You are familiar with this area. You have the confidence of customers we are unable to approach. And what do you want me to do? Return? Save the business you stole? My dad whispered. You don't understand. We're going to lose everything. I gave him a look. As I did, both of them fell silent. We can grant you the majority of the shares, Quentin spoke hastily. Anything you desire. I gave a headshake. What I desire is already mine. I opened the door and went around the desk. Maria, let them see. My dad stayed. Jessica, I was mistaken. Almost anything. I apologize as well. I stopped. Something inside of me cracked for a heartbeat. It wasn't weakness, though. It was made available. I apologize as well, I said. However, you made a decision. You now have to live with it. Lucy peered in as the door shut behind them. Are you all right? I glanced at the office. The prizes. Our team's pictures. The growth chart figures behind me. You know what? I grinned as I spoke. I am, I said. Her wisdom was the only thing that was valuable to inherit. In the business world, failure spreads more quickly than news. I was sitting in my office with a fresh cup of coffee and a list of incoming calls that I had no intention of returning by the time Joseph Industries formally filed for bankruptcy. The headlines were harsh. Family empire collapses amid scandal and mismanagement. CEO Quentin Carter resigns after environmental violations surface. Lucy held a tablet and leaned against my doorframe. You want the worst news or the bad news first? I arched an eyebrow. Meredith submitted a divorce petition. Additionally, your father was just subpoenaed. Slowly and without surprise, I nodded. What about Quentin? Fled to Dubai. Attempted to use fictitious paperwork to gain access to frozen accounts. They are extraditing him. I took a drink of my coffee. No happiness, don't boast. Nothing but silence, allowing the dust to fall where it must. Once more, my father arrived at my workplace. For the 3rd week in a row, Maria's eyes were questioning as she gazed at me. I gave a nod. I didn't make him wait this time. His eyes were weary, and his shoulders slumped as he stepped in. The man who used to run boardrooms. No, not the man who previously handed the world to someone else after promising it to me. He took a seat quietly. He declared, I've lost the house. Whatever Meredith could, she took. Quentin took the remainder. There is hardly much left. I gave a nod, remained silent. He surveyed the space. You created something lovely here. It's sincere, I remarked. After a moment of hesitation, he took out an envelope. He put them on my desk and said, "My remaining shares in Joseph Industries. They are now worthless. However, they were always meant to go to you." I gazed intently at the envelope. "I don't desire them." Slowly, he nodded. "I understand. All I needed was for you to have them, not to make things better. Simply to admit what I did wrong." He got up. "I ought to have had faith in you. Now I see that." He left without my intervention. But I yelled, "There's a coffee shop around the corner," as soon as he got to the door. For me, Wednesday mornings are slow. If you're present. Startled, he turned, then gave a nod. "That would be nice." We stood next to each other at my grandmother's cemetery a month later. Fresh flowers. Wind that is clean. The sun in the morning. I had never taken him here before. "I ought to have arrived sooner," he remarked. I pulled the envelope from my coat and said, "She left me a letter." After the requirements were fulfilled, I received it from Viragil. I gave it to him. Silently, he read it. Then he hugged it to his chest after carefully folding it. "She knew I would let you down." "No," I muttered. "She knew I would make it through." With a familiar folder in hand, Virgil emerged from behind us. He remarked, "There's something else." Everything was meticulously prepared by my granny. A base, under my name. She had made arrangements for a nonprofit to be established under my direction. After the company turned a profit, and I demonstrated that I could manage it alone, financed. All set to go. Why? To assist young women, like myself, in starting sustainable enterprises. With gentle eyes, Virgil remarked, "She wanted you to lead it." I studied the documents. At my dad. And I became aware that something had changed, not only in him, within me. "Are you willing to assist?" I inquired. My dad blinked. "Are you serious?" I said. "I don't trust easily. You'll have to work for it. However, I believe that everyone should have an opportunity to start over." He grinned. Not the old slick smile, an actual one. Tiny, weary, hopeful. There, next to the headstone of the woman who had predicted this whole situation, we signed the foundation forms. Jessica Carter, CEO founder. Granddaughter. I immediately thought of the name, the Legacy Foundation, because she left me with that, not cash, not authority, clarity. Conviction, and an idea of success that focused on contribution rather than conquering. It's about creation, not inherited. Months went by, then a year. Green Shift kept expanding. We traveled abroad. The first 5 female-led enterprises were financed by the foundation. In the background, my dad gave discreet advice, not for fame but for elegance. Naturally, Lucy remained by my side. At midnight, I'm still messaging. When I hit a wall, I continued to arrive with coffee and backup plans. She discovered me standing on the rooftop garden of the new office one morning. "It seems like a complete circle, doesn't it?" I said. She said. I gave a nod. "The past has been buried," she concluded, "and grew something better." I grinned. "The true inheritance is that retaliation might sometimes take the form of silence. At times, it appears as though you are so high above those who doubted you that they are unable to see your wings. Other times, though, it appears to be tranquil, earned, keep quiet, unquestionable, the type that doesn't require yelling, since it created itself out of nothing and made it all matter."